I bought the new Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, the Fall Romance palette, because yeah. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. We're taking a look at the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Fall Romance Palette. If you guys like unfiltered makeup opinions and honest reviews, subscribe and let's get into this video. And today we're going to be doing some swatches. We're going to take a look at some eyeshadow looks that I am creating with this palette, and we're also going to look at comparison palettes. If you guys would like to see a full swatch video, please leave me a comment down below and I can produce one for you. If you guys really want to see like comparisons between some other Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes, definitely let me know in the comment box down below. The brand new Anastasia Beverly Hills Fall Romance Palette. So the packaging is felt. It's like this deep purple burgundy shade. This is definitely like reminiscent of fall. It is absolutely stunning. 12 jewel toned shades in here, and these are very reminiscent of fall with like the darker tones, the browns, a purple, and some greens as well. The Fall Romance Palette is a provocative blend of decadent shades, featuring 12 seductive jewel-toned metallic and rich neutral eyeshadows. It is an essential eyeshadow collection featuring highly pigmented, easy-to-blend formulas and offers a versatile color range for creating everything from a subtle to a dramatic look. The palette currently retails for $55. It is on the Anastasia site. I did do a search for this on the Ulta Beauty website. I can't find it yet, so it's not on Ulta when I'm filming this video, but Ulta does carry Anastasia Beverly Hills. So at some point it will be on the Ulta Beauty website, and also Sephora carries like Anastasia Beverly Hills. So Sephora will at some point have it as I actually am wearing the palette. This is a different look than the tutorial that I will be featuring. I actually forgot to turn on my microphone when doing the eyeshadow look that you were about ready to see. I will do some close-up tutorials, so stay tuned for those on my channel. So let's get into the tutorial. Just like me playing around with these eyeshadows, and then I will get...
I wanted to start by priming my under eyes and my lids with the Urban Decay Quickie Concealer. I found that this concealer is just very easy to work with. It is more of a matte base and it just creates a good blank canvas for you to put your eyeshadow onto. I do sometimes use the back of the brush that is on the Quickie Concealer, and then I liked to go in with the shade Leather, which I found was like super pigmented even after I had tapped it off my brush. I did use a Singe Beauty EO3 to do this, and it did take me a little bit just to kind of blend this out because it did go on so pigmented, but it was easy for me to blend out across the lid. I did use a swiping motion just to pack on that color back and forth, and then I did use the shade Crimson. This is going to be with an EO2 from Singe Beauty, and I first packed this on, so I just tap 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 on the outer corner of the lid. This is more of a like purpley burgundy crimson shade, and with using this more fluffy brush it'll make it easier to blend out. Then I did decide to use the shade Divine, which is that purpley metallic. I wet down my flat brush and I tried applying it that way and found that applying it with my finger was a lot easier because this is a very interesting formula to say the least. It felt very scratchy. When I put it on my lid, it almost felt like sticky and hard to move around even with my finger. Like this was just a really weird shade. Then I did want to use the shade Moonlight, which was a pink iridescent eyeshadow topper. I used the EO1 from Singe Beauty, and I was putting this on the inner corner of my lid. And I was blending this into that Divine shade to kind of give it like a fade from like a pink Moonlight to that purpley shade. And I did just tap this on and also sweep it across the inner corner. Next, I took the shade Crown. This is like a gold yellow, almost like a duochrome shift. I also used a clean EO1. I used my Sigma switch and switched it out. And I actually patted this more on the center of my lid just to see how it looked on top of that Divine shade and to kind of give my eye this like iridescent feeling shade. I did blend it in a little bit to Crimson, and I did pop this on the inner corner just on top of Moonlight, and it made it pop just a little bit more. You can see my eyelids look kind of like oil slicky, and that's the best term that I can use to like actually say like what my eyes look like. I did also try to use the mulberry shade with my M16 from Moda Beauty, and I put this like above my crease and almost up into my brow line. I thought this was going to sheer out the colors and just get rid of some of that harsh like lines that I was having. Then I took an EO5 from Singe Beauty and used the shade Crimson, which is what we used on the outer corner, and I did blend that into the outer corner and into the lower lash line just to make it more of a cohesive look. You can see that the eyeshadow is pulling a little bit more purple in tone, and I believe it's because Divine is so purple as well. This looks more romantic and more purple. And we just sheared this out all along the lower lash line, and then I finished off the eyeshadow look with my Maybelline Falsies mascara. This is almost like a tubing yet volumizing mascara. It's really beautiful on the eyelids, and you guys can see how reflective this eyeshadow palette is. Overall, I used like half of the shades that were in this eyeshadow palette to see what I could come up with. It was definitely more sultry, more purple.
I wanted to pull out for you, first off, the most recent Anastasia Beverly Hills release. This was the Cosmos palette. So with the Cosmos palette, this was also a 12 shade eyeshadow palette. This was released earlier in 2023. And as you can see here, the Cosmos palette is a very like warm leaning color story. It was actually known for having like multi-chromes and duochromes in it. So you can see like a very vast contrast between the two. They're actually like really pretty. I'm finding that these two color stories are very deep and dark, which is not like normal for Anastasia. Usually she's a little bit more like balanced across the board. I have the Rose Metals palette. Let's see how this stacks up. This Rose Metals palette was released last year. It was her holiday slash like fall palette for 2022. So this is a year old release already. Mine is not that old. Mine I actually purchased at the beginning of 2022, like mid 2022. Here is the Rose Metals palette and the comparison between the two. Rose Metals is very, very, very grungy. It is also kind of a mix of both warm and cool tone. You have some like cooler tone shades in here, and you also have some warmer tone shades. It does have those green foils, but green mattes it does not have at all. I see some shades that maybe might look kind of familiar, and I'm curious to see like if there are any shades in this palette that would really stack up against the other eyeshadow palette, against the Fall Romance palette. So here we have the Nouveau palette. This was released in the spring of 2022. So this one is about a year old. And this is more of a warm leaning, more of a like lighter color story. You can definitely tell there's some like, this one is more reminiscent of what Anastasia offers across the board. Very blendable, pigmented shades, some really beautiful like foil shades in here. Like they are so, so buttery. And it's just like, this is one of her like comeback palettes that everybody was raving about when it was released in 2022. But definitely the color story is not very reminiscent of this one either. Now I am noticing a difference between the packaging. Like this one's actually lighter than this one. This one's pretty hefty and heavy. And even with like the Rose Metals and the Cosmos palette, these two are like really hefty compared to the new Fall Romance palette. This is very like lightweight feeling. In regards to formula, when I have used this a couple of times on my eyes now, and when I'm thinking back to like the OG go-to Anastasia formulas that I absolutely know and love, they are blendable, they're pigmented, the foils are so metallic and so juicy on your eyes, and I've really found with this one that this shade in particular was like super scratchy, and it's scratchy like in the pan, and it almost feels like it's been pressed too hard, and it's not that buttery formula that we're used to in an Anastasia palette. Now the other ones, these ones are okay. This shade right here is Crown that I have on this finger, and it's okay. It's not that super buttery formula. This one, which is Fireside, this one is more reminiscent of the buttery formula, but it's not super soft like it was in the Rose Metals and the Nouveau palette. Like those ones are very soft, but they're also like very easy to blend out. I found that there's some weird inconsistencies between the formulations, and even with this palette, like the mattes were a little bit harder to blend out, but the foils were still pretty spot on and they were still really beautiful, and you didn't have anything in this palette that was like super hard to blend out. Like even the mattes in this one are just, they are so creamy and soft to the touch, and with this new one, I'm just feeling like it's very hard. All right, here are the swatches of the Fall Romance Palette, 12 shades in total. And I was actually noticing that you only really have 4, maybe 5 matte shades. One of them is a little bit of like almost a sheen, and the other one has micro glitter in it. So I don't even know if you could really technically call those matte shades because they're not like a for real matte. They have something in them. The 2 shades that I'm talking about are Mulberry. This has almost like a sheen to it, and it's almost like a mix of a foil. Really hard to describe, but it definitely has some sort of like pearlescent something to it. It is definitely not a matte. Then you also have the shade Ember, which is the shade right here, and it has micro glitters in it. So I would not call that a for real matte either. It was very scratchy when I swatched it as well. Really, really hard to put on. The one shade that really blew me away when I was swatching it was Midnight, which is that like plummy, purpley, foily shade. That was really stunning to swatch. I'm not gonna lie. Like that was really beautiful. And the other one that really blew me away was the shade Fireside, which is like that golden shade as well. But if you notice, like the only light toned shade that you do have is the foil shades. You don't really have a lighter toned shade. I could have definitely seen this palette eliminating one of the green shades or eliminating even this shade and going with something else and adding something that was a little bit more skin tony to me. Like, please remove that. I could definitely see it being replaced with like a mauve pink, like what you have in Modern Renaissance. That probably would have been a lot better. So, okay, so this is what I really feel like the eyeshadow palette should have looked like. First off, let's just talk about what I eliminated. I eliminated the shade Ember, which was that micro glitter brown shade. It was just very scratchy and patchy. Did not like at all. And then I also removed Mulberry, which was that weird, almost like pearlescent sheeny color. Removed that one. And then I also removed Twilight, which was a deep, very, very dark hunter green shade. I removed that one because you already have that shade in Thorns, which is the other green shade in this palette. I replaced it with, you guys are going to laugh, I pulled all of these shades out of the Modern Renaissance palette. So starting with the one right on my wrist here, I replaced it with Buon Fresco. Buon Fresco. And it is like a mauve, almost purpley in tone when it's swatched on me. And it is honestly really beautiful. And that would create such a beautiful like purple look if she was going for something like that. Or even if you're looking for some of those darker, richer tones. And then I have Real Gar, which is this shade right here. This is like an orange shade, but it's darker and it's more burnt. It reminds me of pumpkin spice. And this shade paired with some of these other shades in here would have been absolutely stunning. And then the other shade that I did replace was with burnt orange from Modern Renaissance as well. I feel like this would have been more of a fall romance palette. No, we don't have that like superficial skin toned color, but I mean, this is more of a color story that I could work with, and you're not working with shades that are scratchy on your eye that look the same. This would be a more balanced palette to me for anybody because some of the shades are still very rich in tone. They may look a little bit light, but for me, like this is my preferred color story for the Anastasia Fall Romance Palette. Something more like this. If this were the color story, I think this would be more of a hit for me because it's colors that I can work with, and if it were the same quality as some of the like older Anastasia palettes, then I'd be super happy with it. And not to mention, I did eliminate some of the shades that just like, they did not work. They didn't work, or they were duplicate shades. So the biggest thing that I'm noticing with this one is that the mattes are a little bit harder to blend out, and the foils just aren't as buttery as what they normally are. Do I think that the color story is pretty? Yeah, I think the color story is doable. It's nice for fall, don't get me wrong. Like, I love these like deep, richly pigmented shades. I really feel like this is actually more reminiscent of like the Subculture palette. I have some thoughts about this palette. I have some qualms with this palette, and I just feel like it's missing something. Like, I feel like the formulation really isn't there. I really feel like she's missing like colors in this eyeshadow palette that could have replaced some of the other ones. And honestly, overall, like, is it worth the $55 to purchase? Not really. Honestly, you might want to go and get yourself another Modern Renaissance if you haven't had one in a while, or if you've never had a Modern Renaissance before. This one to me is more like, it is romantic. This is such a romantic palette. It's very OG. It's very go-to. This one was more matte based, whereas like this one's not so matte based, and it is very much more foil based, which I don't like as well. Like, I kind of like the ability to choose more mattes than foils. Like, and I think that's the other problem I have with this palette, is that there's so many foily, like shimmery shades in here. You don't have a lot of room for matte shades, and those matte shades are all dark. Like, all of them are dark, and that just creates a very muddy eyeshadow look, very hard to work with, and I really feel like it's just going to leave you with like a one-dimensional look. I'm still kind of deciding whether or not I like it, but right now, upon like first impression and having used it a couple of times, I'm just kind of like, nah, I don't really need it. I don't think that you should go out and waste your money on it. Is it beautiful? Yes. Is it Anastasia? Yes. Is it the same formulation? No. Is this a good color story? No. Super pasty pale people like me, this is not going to work for you. Even though I love Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I would never, I don't know. It's just, I feel like this is a total miss for me. And I really feel like this could have been executed just a little bit better on her end. And while I love the duochrome formulations, I really feel like it's missing some shades in here. There you have it, my review on the Anastasia Beverly Hills Fall Romance Palette, my first impressions, my thoughts on it. Yes, there's a lot of thoughts on this palette. I hope you guys consider subscribing so that I can see you in my next video. Bye!